I thought it was really exciting that brands could take part in empowering art and empowering artists. I felt like it was a form of advertising where the brand was going to be happy, the creator was going to be happy, and the audience was going to be happy. And if you had the right systems and processes, that everyone, whenever there's a brand deal, we're going to be happy that the content was empowered rather than disturbed.
This is Creative Disruption, the intersection where entertainment, data, and creativity meet. Here's your hosts, Ricky Ray Butler and Derral Eves.
Welcome back to the Creative Disruption podcast, and I'm joined here by my co-host, Ricky Ray Butler. How you doing, Ricky?
I'm doing great. I think I'm kind of a guest today as well, right?
You're right, because today we're actually going to kind of banter back and forth about the industry and how we got started, but more really deep insights. But before we do this, there's like an article that's been floating around that kind of just drives me bonkers, and it's saying that the bubble's going to burst. You know what bubble I'm talking about here?
Oh man, there's a lot of bubbles about to burst. Is it the influencer AI hype bubble?
Oh my gosh!
Or is it the platform bubble?
It is
because that's still kicking a little bit.
It's the influencer bubble. I've read that.
Oh, about just influencers in general.
Yeah, no. This article is going around.
Another reporter that doesn't know data.
Imagine that. A reporter that doesn't actually understand how to quantify the data. So here's the thing. There is an article, and it was really funny. I saw this article show up in LinkedIn, and it was by Mr. Beast's manager. And he says, man, this just drives me nuts. And so I read the article, and there's this lady on Instagram, Ari, has over 2 million followers, and she couldn't sell 36 shirts. And he's like, I should write an article about this. I'm like, Reed, go ahead and write the article, because it's like ridiculous. I think the press is looking for it.
And are these her shirts?
See, that's the question here. So this is
because I know I'm very familiar with the story, and like we looked into it, but I don't have all the context. I guess.
So the article itself that's been floating around, it sourced out, and then multiple people picked it up, like Mashable and so on and so forth, and kind of went from there. Basically said that she was trying to push her audience to go buy some of her shirts at $36. Or I'm sorry, not $36. She couldn't even sell 36 shirts. And so kind of that's where it went. But what's interesting, though, is she has over 2 million followers. And I think the average person that kind of looks at that.
2.6 million.
Was it 2.6?
Yeah. So
the average person that looks at that, like, oh man, she has a huge, super engaged audience. Now, with your background, you kind of look at those numbers a little bit differently than the average person that says, oh, you have 1 million followers on Instagram or 2.6 million followers on Instagram.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you analyze that?
Well, there's a lot of things to consider, and there's a lot of factors to look at. What are the anomalies? Like, is she seeing spikes up every so often? Followers that just seem unnatural, or is she seeing like drop off, which is also unnatural? And a couple other things is to consider. Does it look like her engagements are like in comments are casual, or are they on point?
Yeah.
Do they look like they're loyalists, or are they just commenting the comment? Because there's a couple things that could be happening. One, she could have. We actually do know, like with our AI, we already took a look at this. And
I should have known, Ricky.
Yeah, we already confirmed that. We're predicting that she has around like 25% fake followers.
25%.
25%. But still, well, not just 25% fake followers, but 25% fake engagement.
Right.
Around content. And so if you look at that. That's a really high number, but that's not the only thing that's going on here, because if you take out 25%, there's still a lot of people viewing and interacting. There's other things she could be doing. She could also be a part of, I call them, the casual engagement groups where, you do a like for a like, you comment for a comment,
right,
and basically you join a group like on Telegram, and where there's like maybe, several thousand or, tens of thousands of people that are part of this network group, where they make a promise that once you make a post live, everyone goes and comments on it.
So let's just make it clear. Yeah. That's not a good thing to do.
No, not at all. Because So we looked at a couple of different angles. One thing we looked at like the bot percentages, but we also tried to look at, okay, if we were to try to do something on Instagram stories, how many views can we predict that she's going to get? And we were predicting that it was in not high views at all, right. and probably around like the low 30,000s, which is very low
for 2.6 million followers.
Followers, yes.
Yeah.
Now, with that said, I don't think it's the only reason why she couldn't sell her shirts. I think there's, they maybe weren't a good fit for the loyalists that she did have. I mean, there's a couple different things because this is a problem not only because of bots. I mean, it has to be a product that really fits and is going to resonate with her audience. Well, is her audience male or female?
Right. And the big issue is this is like, first off, how do you actually sell shirts on Instagram, right? And if you've never done that before, doesn't matter if you're an advertiser or an influencer, there's going to be a bumpy road ahead just because you have, all these followers and 25% bot. Yeah. It's still, how do you engage them to actually purchase? And so she has since taken down her post. She deleted her post on asking to, get 1,000 shirts or whatever, and she sold 36.
Yeah.
But that being said, you bring in some very valid points. And so a lot of creators, they'll just go and post and say, hey, go buy this. And they don't include them in the process of actually creating the product. If the community is more engaged in creating the product, then guess what happens? They're more apt to buy. And If it's one of their ideas, they're even more apt to buy that. And so it's just like, that's kind of a heavy thing for a lot of creators is they're really good at maybe posting an Instagram picture or doing some videos or even some stories, but to get people to actually want to care to pull their credit card out of their wallet and purchase something online, that takes a little bit of skill and it takes a lot of trust.
Yeah, and one thing to also look at is you can't cut corners.
Yeah,
and you have to be very careful with that because my data science team, based off of our different AI that we've been we've had looking at this, are very confident that there's a lot of artificial stuff going on here.
Right.
And as a result of that, you're not going to get the most important metric. Yeah, you might have, some engagements that looks like you're getting engagements or you're getting views, but if you can't drive sales, it's a sign that you're going to be very limited, especially with brands becoming a lot more sophisticated. You're going to be very limited in your monetization, or at least, getting, return deals.
Right. Well, let's talk about your background a little bit because
Sure.
I think a lot of people, you float not necessarily under the radar, but you're in the right circles. You know what I'm saying? You've always been at the right place, Ricky. The right place at the right time. I don't know how you do it.
Well, we're always very data driven. So as there's all this hype out there and all these different companies getting a lot of different press, even from when I first started the company I started, I have always just, been very particular about making very calculated risks.
Yeah, and you probably you probably have some algorithms say, okay, I got to go to this party or this party. Which one's going to have the better connections at?
No, we never gotten that targeted. But
your background, you've been in the industry super long, helping influencers actually do integrated brand deals.
Yes,
and to go through this. I mean,
so I'll give a quick summary.
So,
over 10 years ago, I started a company called Plaid, and I started that company.
Why did you come up with the shirt?
Oh gosh. So by the way,
there it is.
I hated the name. I started with
Plaid.
I started with two partners, and I was outvoted on the name of the company. and
now you wear Plaid.
Then I bought them both out, and then I just kept the name. It was too late.
We're doing Plaid, baby.
But no, so we started a company because we realized that this was something that was growing really fast. And after doing a couple of tests with different creators and different influencers and crashing websites or selling out of product, realized that, wow, we gotta really take this seriously and scale this up as quickly as possible. And so we started out not,
now this is like
everyone else.
10 years ago, right? I mean,
yeah.
Because you had clients go to the first VidCon, that I was familiar with.
Yeah. So I was at the first VidCon. We've been around for a really long time. I remember when Michael Buckley and Ryan Higa were like the two powerhouses of YouTube.
Right.
I mean, they're like it's very old school. But what we realized is that I had a good amount of experience in digital advertising, and when I started seeing the amount of clicks and like the CTR percentages and the amount of conversions that we'd get from a campaign, there was no other form of advertising that could compete with it. And to be frank, even today, 10 years later, there's still no other form of digital advertising or traditional advertising that can compete when it comes to engagements and when it comes to conversions. And so
when you're able to see that, like looking at that, were you kind of like Mr. Krabs in SpongeBob? You start seeing dollar signs in every little thing. Is that what it was? And you're like, okay, I got to take this opportunity here.
Well, I mean, that's a part of it, but a big part of it also is I thought it was really exciting that brands could take part in empowering art and empowering artists. I felt like it was a form of advertising where the brand was going to be happy, the creator was going to be happy, and the audience was going to be happy. And if you had the right systems and processes, that everyone, whenever there's a brand deal, we're going to be happy that the content was empowered rather than disturbed.
Well, and two, it's like, and this is what I love of where the direction of the industry is going. It's like we have more data now than we've ever had before. Some's you're able to organize in a way, and some's unstructured. But we have so much data, and it can help us to make the right decisions based off of that data. And it's like I'm excited for it from a creative side. I'm excited for it from a sales side, because now we can see exactly what's going on and where to actually focus our attention for the tweaks.
What we're noticing with unstructured data, so this is not the data that you can fit into a spreadsheet. It's not this, structured like views and engagements, et cetera. This is, actual video and audio and groups of text. We're seeing unstructured making the biggest difference when it comes to conversions.
Yeah.
Not necessarily when it comes to predicting views and clicks.
No, but
when it
seeing
comes
the
to
patterns and saying, okay, here's the patterns. This could lead to
as humans, it's really hard for us to look at.
Right.
So when you look at a video, you're seeing it from one perspective. When our AI looks at a video, they're looking at it from 10 million different perspectives.
So
it is looking at it from 10 million different
it's crazy. So tell me how it happened from 10 years ago to now. Like, how's it transformed? Because I know brands were really, really skeptical to come on and say, oh, you want me to work with this influencer? Why do I want to work with this influencer?
We were laughed out of a good handful of the top like media and advertising agencies. Like,
are any of those people still around? Did you like, hey, remember that time?
No, I
try
to forgive and forget.
But you can carry this little black book.
But there's a time where like both brands and agencies would like look at what we're doing and say, well, yeah, that's where the eyeballs are, but the content sucks.
Yeah,
and a big part of it is like with a new generation getting into the corporate world, that's a big part of why this is exploding like it is. But also, brands are all very focused on driving ROI more now than ever before.
Right.
And so that's exciting. But with that said, when we first started out, there's a lot of different creators that wanted us to represent them, and we decided early on that we were going to represent the brand and be creator and solution agnostic, and that was the smartest thing we did.
That like so outside the box thinking, because most people, okay, we'll go ahead and we'll manage you and we'll bring the brand deals in and we'll go from there. But you're like, wait a minute, if we have a better relationship with the brands, we can go out and find the talent, and if the talent comes and goes, we can actually just still.
The talent and the creators, there's just something about loving, friends that don't have exclusivity.
Yeah,
that aren't going to force you to give give them a percentage on everything that they do. That isn't being fake based on trying to do a deal with you.
Yeah. And
so what we learned is, I think Forbes, mentioned and called us, YouTube's rich uncle. We're invited to all the parties. We're friends with everyone, but we were out of the drama.
You're always bringing them money. Yeah. You're never taking their money.
And to me, it was all about generating ROI and optimization. Yeah. And when it came from the brand perspective. So our whole focus was to scale campaigns. And so, we today use AI and deep learning algorithms to do what we're doing. But before, we were using more, basic, AI to do predictive analytics. And we've always been doing predictive analytics.
Since day one?
Well, yeah, since early on in the company, we've always had to do that because no one really did. We were always
like company secrets.
We were always building our own bots,
right?
And we never really had a PR strategy. So we were growing over 100% every year, and that was without even having a sales org. And so 4 or 5 years ago, I sold my company to Brand Entertainment Network, which we called Ben, and basically which is 100% owned by Bill Gates, but is basically two companies that have been merged together. One was Plaid, which we were one of the first companies to really work with influencers when it came to doing campaigns with brands and working with influencers at scale. And then we merged with a company called Norm Marshall Associates, which was one of the first companies over 35 years ago that did product placement.
Right.
And what was interesting, when we got together and connected, we had the same systems and processes. They also had their own way of predicting results. And we merged together, and with the resources that we had, we're able to come up with very sophisticated. I mean, we had over 35 years of data, over a decade of data when it came to conversions with influencers. So we took all of that data, and we were able to use the resources and create some very sophisticated AI and deep learning to use on our platform.
So there's a lot of brands that were resistant to do brand integrations with new online video and with creators and so on, and they really kind of drug their feet with this. And I'm very familiar with a lot of these people in the industry, because they're like, oh no, because it disrupts the apple cart. Like the apple cart is like, hey, we have this unlimited budget we can spend, because they don't really care about ROI, because you can't really track ROI. But now it's like, no, every little cent can be tracked, and it can be attributed back to a specific campaign. And those specific campaigns can have sub-campaigns of seeing exactly what's actually working.
And you have to thank Google and a lot of these huge platforms like Facebook to getting brands shifting the way they're thinking, because they've always been competing with traditional advertising, which was very limited when it came to like results. Yeah. But even on the traditional side of our business, where we do product placement in film and TV.
Let's talk about that for a second, because when I was a kid, growing up in the 80s, I was watching E.T. for the first time. Yeah. And later on, learning when I'm in marketing, I got my degree in marketing and stuff like that, but it's just like learning about the opportunity that M&M's had that they did not take.
Right.
And Reese's Pieces took that opportunity, and to see the difference of cells and introducing Reese's Pieces to a broader audience because it was integrated into the film itself. I think that's the answer for a lot of these brands. It's like, look, they weren't selling the product, but they were selling the product. How do creators do that? How do you actually do it in the movies?
The product empowered the story. Yeah. And it was a part of the story. And so a lot of times... I
went out and bought, it's not M&M's, but Reese's Pieces. Like, I just went right for it because...
Yeah, and after Stranger Things, I bought Eggo waffles. I've been eating that every day.
Bandersnatch, it was like the...
the cereal, right?
That's right.
But no, and that's the thing is, you obviously with, traditional, brand integration or product placement, can't do the same measurements. But I think that's going to change. And I think it's potentially going to change first on Amazon. Yeah. You can already see the music that's playing on Amazon.
Do you know what's...
On Amazon Prime, as well as all the actors and actresses. Eventually, it's going to be products tying to the store. Yep. And then when we can start measuring, click-through rates for traditional product placement, that's going to be very exciting.
Here's my prediction. And I'll be quick to predict this for sure. But so Google Brain is the AI that's running YouTube. Right. And also a lot of people tap into the API and they're able to learn a lot of data. So for my presentation that I'm doing on the main stage at the industry track for VidCon, I'm actually showing clips of videos, and the AI is able to identify what it is and actually create all the resources where it is online. And it's able to identify what it's about. It's able to see, oh, that's a Sprite can or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it starts to associate everything that's in the room or whatever's in the video, and what's being said, the tonality of the video, the pacing of the video, and everything. And it just starts to group it together and starts to have all that data available. And so to take it even a step further. So
that's a lot of technology that we are also creating.
Yeah, and you can see it in real time too. You can see all this stuff happening in real time, and to have that actually show up, if that's what you want in your feed, oh, that's what I want. One step by, one click by, you're able to do that. I can see that's where the future of things gone. Yeah. But from a product integration now, like taking the Reese's Pieces example back in the 80s, like how much more effective is it now versus back doing a product placement in a general video that might or might not take off?
You know what? I mean, it's in a video that might or might not take off. And so that's why you got to have predictive analytics.
Right. And you can't predict that for a movie. I mean, you can after opening weekend, but...
Well, so and that's the thing is... It's really important to be able to do this in a very calculated way, and if we could step back just a little bit, back in the 80s. And even now, a lot of brands, when they thought of product placement, it was just more like a check off the list. It was something that they didn't necessarily really pay for, even. And
it was just more brand recognition. Hey, we have our brand here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But today, brands are realizing that this is actually going to become a really big part of their marketing mix and their media mix, because a lot of the population out there is avoiding advertising like the plague.
Right.
That's why the subscription, non-ad supported platforms are really starting to explode right now. Ad blocking technology has never been up at a higher rate than it is today. I believe like Google, every year acquires a bunch of ad blocking, softwares. And I don't know if that's the case for sure.
Note to self, create one of those and you get bought out by Google.
Sure. But even on the traditional side, with DVR, there's a lot of different ways of avoiding ads. And so, brands are now like realizing that, whoa, this is something that we have to take seriously. And we know from our own data is that consumers prefer integrations way more than actual ads.
Right.
Even if, think about it. What was your favorite Super Bowl commercial of all time?
Wow. That's a tough one. Right out of the gut.
Let's say Old Spice.
I was thinking back more, Apple, like the Apple Macintosh computer. That was like by far very inspiring. I remember seeing it as a kid, and I'm like, I want to do this one day. I want to make Super Bowl commercials, which I don't do, but I get more views in the Super Bowl commercials. So I kind of do it, right?
Well, that's the thing is, even if you have your most favorite Super Bowl commercial of all time, after you see it 5 times or maybe 8 times, you're tired of seeing it.
Right.
You want to go back to the content that you're trying to consume. And so this is a trend that's really growing. It is really starting to grow. And our company, as a result of that trend, is just exploding.
Right.
Both from the influencer side as well as the product placement side. But to be honest, the two worlds, more so than ever today, are colliding across the board. And we always knew, 10 years ago, that the future of influencers was going to be the future of TV, and that's what it is today.
So one of the most effective campaigns is actually done by an Amazon company, and it's Audible. I've been really impressed with it. It's a very easy integration. Hey, be a part of my book club. This is the book that I'm reading.
They're scaling like crazy,
and their growth is insane.
And it's been consistent for 5 years.
I know. It's been
a very long-term strategy, and that's what all brands need to figure out how to get to.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing is, they just did an ad that's more of an integration because they're saying, hey, join my book club. Here's the Audible link. If you get your first month, your first book is on me or whatever it is. This is the book that I'm reading right now. These people that are connected with this influencer are more apt to do that because, number one, you have to have several touch points to get someone to actually do anything online to sell, to buy or anything like that. And to have a trusted source, that authority, say, hey, I'm doing this. You should too. That's a great integration, for me. How does a brand that's just coming out and say, okay, no one knows who I am, and how am I going to get my product out there? They just say, okay, Ricky and Bill Gates companies, how are you going to get my product in front of the right people? What's the process that you would look at? Would you look at, okay, which platform is going to be the best to do it? Or are you going to do kind of an integrated approach, or what would you do?
Well, it depends on the current data that they have. Who does this product resonate with? And then from there, we of course, look at the different, platforms that we want to focus on. And let's say, we decide there's a good fit from Twitch.tv to Instagram to YouTube, as well as, integration opportunities, let's say on Netflix or broadcast television. Right. We basically put together a plan. And then what we do is we use our generalized data to figure out, okay, what areas and what pieces of content out there from a creator standpoint as well as from a production standpoint are going to be best for the brand, and which ones are going to end up having more impact for the brand.
Right.
And then from there, you just optimize it, and then you customize the models around that specific brand. And so within a year, they have an optimization strategy where they're able to predict success month after month.
Yeah. So it's really I find it fascinating, this industry, and I think that A lot of people that were hesitant now are more on board because the data is quantified now. They're able to see, okay, here's what we were able to bring in versus a cold lead, which would be, cold ads going to a cold list. Yeah, they might have part of the segment
them or disturbing them to get in front of them.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's just like, that's not the best approach at all times. I think can be quite effective if you know how to disrupt that. You can pull people in. But that being said, that takes skill.
A lot of the stuff that you've done.
Yeah.
I mean, people like you or like the Harmon brothers, where you create an advertisement
it's more of an organic piece. Yeah.
Yeah, it's more of an organic piece, but is able to not just, tell someone that, hey, it's a good idea to try this product. You actually sell them from A to Z and going and trying the product where they actually have an action right after.
And that takes skill though to do that. So like the average brand's not going to do that. They think they can do it, but they want to control way too much. And so they're never going to do it. So that cold lead's not as good as a warm lead, which would be, hey, having someone of trust say, hey, go ahead and do it. Now, we talked about this before in a previous podcast, but it was about Netflix, how Netflix really exploded. It wasn't necessarily the technology or anything like that, but it was the integrated brand deal that they did with so many different influencers out there. And we talked, we went in depth a little bit about I thought it was $50, but you guys were saying it was a lot more than $50.
It ranged. But I mean, and I didn't work on that deal.
Yeah, no, Jim was talking about it.
Yeah, Jim Latterback, who's now this, the head of VidCon. I mean, he's the one. I mean, his company is the one that had the Netflix account, and yeah, like there were, I know personally several different creators that made a lot of money every year on that.
Yeah, and that was like, okay, we don't need to do anything else because we got the Netflix deal, and it was just that lucrative from there.
What should have happened, a lot of brands, they want to do these one-off campaigns. What should have happened, brands back then, because that was like, I think, was that 5 years ago?
Yeah,
like 6 years
ago.
Or 4 years ago?
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago, 5-6 years ago. But back then, brands were still putting their toes into the water.
Yeah.
But that was like an evergreen campaign that was just building so much momentum for Netflix, where millions and millions of people were becoming subscribers.
Yeah, and they weren't even paying on subscribers; they were just paying on signups. Like you're just getting your email for that first trial, which is crazy.
And then Audible did a good job doing the same thing. And then there's a lot of we have a good handful of clients that are doing something very similar. It's an ongoing campaign, and it's one of those things where you just keep growing it and you keep adjusting and optimizing and that's where basically when it comes to like our AI that we talk about, our algorithms, it's much more empowered when you do something ongoing.
Yeah.
Because it then is able to figure out all the nuances and the patterns, not just around what's happening in the industry or what's happening with the creators, but what's happening with that specific brand. And we actually had a situation where one of our clients said, hey, we're targeting men between 18 and 30. Let's go make stuff happen. And our AI came back and said, no. You need to be targeting women 30 plus.
Yep.
And
what do they say? They're like, okay, are you sure?
We made that adjustment and started testing, and the conversions just exploded, and that client has now changed their entire strategy following the AI predictions.
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating. I think the industry is going light speeds, and there's like people and brands that just had their toe in the water. They're all in now. For me, it's all about looking at the full picture. Just doing an integrated brand deal isn't just, you can't just say, okay, that's the only thing that we're going to do. That's just not going to work for every brand. And, you can only get so much, and you actually have saturation at certain points.
And that can happen. And that's why, you have to be very careful of doing it in a very organic way. We call it the consensus triangle, which is a system, which is a process that is data driven,
right?
Where you have to just make sure across all the different verticals that you look at all the different nuances, across all the different regions, you look at all the cultural nuances, and then you figure out how to just have a steady campaign that continues to go. I don't think saturation is as big of a deal as it was, like 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. But today, like there's seriously millions and millions of creators.
But in saturation, if they went all in, like they say, okay, Ricky, I have a $40 million budget and I want to burn it in 2 weeks.
Yes, that's going to create a level of saturation.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there are brands that are spending that much.
I think you've done a few like
Yeah,
that.
there's brands that are spending that much, on an annual basis, but not on a 2-week basis. So there are definitely ways. If you're going to spend $40 million in 2 weeks, yes, that could saturate, especially if it's like targeting a specific group, that's going to saturate the community, pretty aggressively in 2 weeks. But with that said, you're talking about the Super Bowl. What's interesting with how the landscape is today, brands can literally see the results and the views of a Super Bowl ad every month.
I agree.
And they
with
can
that.
do it in an ongoing way and make it so they have live data that makes it so that presence of a Super Bowl ad performs better month after month.
Right. And that's the whole thing too. It's like, okay, just because you did an integrated brand deal and you can do one Super Bowl type of push every single month, it's what happens after the fact, because 9 times out of 10, they're not going to buy immediately. Something's going to distract them, but you hit the page, whatever it is. And that's where that remarketing is so key on a lot of these brands. And I'm just blown away. Some companies I go to consult for, and they have all this money that they're pushing in influencer marketing. And I'm like, well, are you controlling the pixel? And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, oh, crap. This is going to be a very long day. But no, it's just talking to them that, hey, after the fact, how are you segmenting the data and how are you serving them ads based off of the things that's happening there? And two, some of the smarter brands will actually, if you do an integrated brand deal, they look at, hey, give us 6 seconds of a snippet that we can do for remarketing on YouTube, because they have the bumper ads that are super, super cheap. So they go and they don't get to the conversion page, right? So on YouTube, say, hey, why haven't you bought it yet? Or whatever it may be. And so that's the whole thing, is you can integrate your integrated brand deals, but also with some remarketing, and it can be very, very effective.
Yeah, because you can use a big variety of creators to get that the upper funnel, filled up. And then there's gonna be people that drop off, and then they're gonna remember, okay, so-and-so has talked about this product. I'm getting another marketing, maybe they just weren't ready to buy at that time, but when they see those, remarketed ads, they might click and end up, converting more. I think across the board, usually, when you get people to go to your site, the next time they go, they're most likely going to purchase.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's go back in time a little bit, because I'm very interested about advertising and marketing and the strategy behind it. I remember seeing online, and I at the time, and I currently still live in the same place. I live in Utah, and I remember seeing a company that was super bold with a very loud spokesperson.
I know who you're talking about.
I love Austin, by the way.
Yeah.
But very, very, I wouldn't say obnoxious, but just very, direct and had this power on the video. It was awesome. And they were selling a tongue cleaner. Or
a brush.
Yeah, when they came to you.
They're one of our first clients, yeah.
Yeah, when they came to you and they're like, okay, let's do some integrated marketing.
Well,
think about that for a second. A tongue brush.
Well, so this is the thing. You're making it sound really formal where they came to us.
Did you go
What
to them?
happened was I was roommates with the founding CEO of Orabrush.
Yeah.
and it was Jeff Harmon.
Yeah.
And we were roommates, and he's one of those guys that's just a creative genius.
Yes.
Like yourself.
He is definitely
he's a creative genius to the point where he's like, a little quirky. Because he's so creative and smart.
No, he is. He's definitely amazing. Yeah.
And so, I saw like what he was doing, and he came.
Were you roommates at the time?
Yeah, we were roommates at the time.
Like, hey,
yeah. It's like like we'd be in his bedroom looking at his laptop, and like, whoa, that data is phenomenal. And it was around that time where I went full time with Plaid,
right?
Where I started to pursue the influencer industry.
Do you remember the first integrated brand deal that you did for Orabrush? Who that was, or what creator that was? Because like that to me is almost like history, because there wasn't a lot of people getting brand deals at the time. Because 10 years ago, if you put it in context, YouTube was barely just giving monetization money to creators. They were just barely making it open so that you can become a YouTube partner. And now you're like, okay, not only you're going to get that, but hey, if you do a shout out here for this
Unfortunately,
company.
I can't remember the first one, but I remember their actual first one before, like we actually officially started working together, and it exploded. It was Juicy Star 07.
Juicy Star 07. I don't know if I'm familiar with that channel.
Yeah. So her name's like Blair. She was one of the early like beauty gurus. And she was like this young teenage girl that just
there you
did
go.
Beauty stuff, and they saw crazy conversions with her, and then Jeff came and said, "Hey, can you help us scale this?" And so we just started working with a bunch of creators with them.
Did you actually find the influencer for them, or was that?
We got to the point where we started not Juicy Star, but that was one that Jeff just did on his own because he noticed that this was going on. Yeah.
It's like, let's test this,
and then we just
we'll let the data tell us if we're going to do it or not.
Then he said, "Hey, I want you guys to help us with this." So we just started growing their campaign. We worked with them. We worked with another company called we just first of all just worked with startup companies,
right?
And then there's a while there where we started working with a lot of oral hygiene, and
I wonder why.
Yeah,
if you could sell a tongue cleaner, I guess you could sell anything.
So a little bit after working with Orabrush, there's a toothbrush sanitizer company that has come up to us, and they really wanted to work with us, and I was like, well, I've had my experience with working with oral hygiene. I think I've had enough. We're going to try to diversify and work across a bunch of other industries.
There you go.
Because we had a lot of different big, oral hygiene companies hitting us up, and
they saw the success.
Yeah, they saw the success.
Okay, yeah.
But so we ended up. So the founder of this toothbrush sanitizer company said, "Look, we really just want to, figure out how we work with influencers through you. We know it's going to work, and this is why." And then they explained that there's a lot of bacteria from the restroom that gets on your toothbrush, and you need to sanitize it.
I
to keep it
shouldn't have heard that today. No.
Yes, and so I won't go into the details of what that bacteria is or what those particles are, and so we're like, whoa. We got to share this with different creators, and we've mainly focused on beauty gurus and vloggers. And after the company's called Sterapod, and after about 3 months of pushing their product, they ended up selling out of over 1,000 stores of Bed Bath & Beyond in the U.S. and Canada.
That's crazy.
And it was the majority of their marketing, but it was their entire marketing budget. And so there were successes back then, but even today, there's a lot of success when it comes to conversions and when it comes to doing influencer campaigns. Yeah. And it's an area that people are going to have to look at in more depth. There is a lot of opportunity today to get conversions and of course to get billions of views if that's what you're pushing for, especially like if you're doing stuff in music video. I mean, there's a lot of ways to really outperform what you're doing with traditional TV advertising. But what people need to really look at when it comes to influencer marketing is, where do they think the future is of retail?
Yeah.
Do they feel like the future is in Walmart? Do they feel like it's an in-store sales? Or do they need to start evolving right now when Amazon and Alibaba end up really controlling the market?
So what I believe, and this is something that I've seen it time and time again, is there's two components. I mean, you have a great product, and you need to figure out how to get that product in front of the right people, and that's kind of the whole essence of a marketing campaign. And yes, it can get very tactical of how you do that. I know that there's people probably watching or listening to this podcast, and they might have an idea, and they're the idea type of people, or they might have a product. And what I want to shift gears is the power of partnering with the right people, and that's where I think a new version of wave of influencer marketing will go. Instead of just doing an integrated brand deal, but a percentage brand deal. And I know that you've facilitated quite a few of those. I want to share a couple. One would be, I put a conference on every year called the Vid Summit. You've come and spoken at it a couple times, and it's like where we bring...
I was uninvited after that.
only once. But anyway, we try to bring all the content creators and marketers and anyone that's interested in online video together and talk about data. We want to talk about audience development and really maximizing the amount of money you can make, with the opportunity. What happened was there's a guy that came, and he actually has a very successful podcast, and he came with an idea. to the Vid Summit, was invited. He really loved the conference, says, I want to come back. And the next year, he came back with a product. And what was interesting, this product was almost ready to go. And it was getting one introduction. So he came up to me, and we had this little kind of speakers slash staff dinner type thing. He said, can you introduce me to Peter McKinnon? And I says, well, I can, but if I introduce you to someone that Peter actually likes, which is Sean Holiday, you'll probably get better reception. So I introduced him to Sean. Sean introduced him to Peter McKinnon, and he basically had the product in hand. And Peter says, well, what's that you're holding? And he showed him, and it was really, really cool. And he's like, well, can I have this one? This is really cool. This solves a lot of the problems that I'm doing. It's called the SwitchPod. And ultimately, he says, no, I can't get you this one right now. It's our only one, but I can ship you a prototype if you'd like to have one. And he says, yeah, sure, whatever. So anyway, they had some interactions, so on and so forth. And they decided to do a Kickstarter campaign and just kind of raise awareness and do their first initial order to go from there. Do you want to take a guess how much money they were able to raise in 48 hours after Peter McKinnon showcased the product?
$400,000?
This is like not even no brand integration. He just loved the product, loved the people, and decided to do a shout out.
A couple $100,000.
Yeah, it's $495,000.
So I first said 400,000, but that's a complete guess. I had no idea.
But yeah, so that's where it came from. And it's just like, what did it really take? It had someone of influence in that space that people says, hey, they solved a problem for me. Because what the biggest thing with vloggers, they use these gorilla pods, and they're moldable, and you can put it around a tree or whatever, and you can go from there. But when you go to set it down to level it, it takes so much time. So the problem is how do you take a vlogger and with SwitchPod, you just flip it with your finger and it just goes all out, and you can just set it down, and you can just go from scene to scene and not have to get everything just right from there. And so it solved this frustration, this problem. And so that shout out led to almost $500,000 in pre-orders, which is crazy. And they haven't even, that was that first shipment that's coming. And so that's the power of that. And then I know that there's been influencers that we know and love that see a product that they love, they'll reach out to them and says, hey, we'll push this for you. And they end up $10 to $20 million in sales, And so for me, is it a smart move for brands that are just starting out to say, hey, let's partner with someone that can get us the right type of traffic? And if it's smart, like what advice would you give them?
If a brand can find a creator that's the right fit, that really resonates with what they're trying to do, I would make them a co-founder.
You'd go make it a co-founder.
Make them a co-founder. I mean, yes, you can try to go hire them, but like if you know that they're going to really push sales, put together like some type of contingency plan that they're going to come on and be a part of the board and then help grow that thing. And then if that's gaining momentum, you're already integrated within the influencer community.
Right.
I think there should be more brands doing this. Now, this is stuff that's been happening for a long time. There's always been licensing deals around celebrities, but we're starting to see now that when these creators are creating their own brands and they're out there and they're pushing it, they just have an advantage to any other startup.
That leads me to the next thing is that's one way of doing it. And then when I'm working with the creators, I usually say, hey, you need to become your own brand deal. And they're like, brand deal? Why do I want to become my own brand deal? And for me, it is easier you just got to have the right idea that will resonate with that audience, and they can actually establish their own brand and use it as something that they're pushing, that they're able to get a lot more, interest in because it's their own company that they're doing.
Sure.
It from there.
So these creators are making hundreds of millions of dollars a year.
Yeah.
And a big part of that is their merchandise and their products.
Well,
and they're all coming out with not with just clothing or T-shirts. They're now coming out with
But this lady only sold 36 shirts.
Yeah. and so going back to Ari.
No, but that's the full circle here.
I kind of feel really bad for her that everyone just went out on attack. And then both the creator community got pissed off about it, as well as the different reporters and different brands, and it marginalized the community for sure. But it's one of those things where Ari, she has she's gotten started. She can't get herself out of that hole of that artificial audience where she can start growing it and making stuff
I didn't
happen.
want to deter the conversation. I thought the conversation was really interesting, but I just wanted to make the point. that if you're saying hundreds of millions of dollars and she can't even sell 36 shirts, then we got a problem here.
There needs to be a rally cry that, hey, you guys can still stay in the community, but you need to figure out how to build an organic, loyal following
for sure.
in. But going back to it, yeah, you're right. Going back to Ari, like selling 26 shirts
is 36
or 36 shirts. Okay, good. It's a little better. You know, I mean, when that goes public and people start, saying, "Oh my gosh, and the influencer industry is dead. It's not going to work anymore."
I didn't know who she was before this. Now I do. I
Yeah.
actually followed her on Instagram just so I could see if she could actually sell a shirt. If she decides to do it again, I hope she does.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think you're proving a point of what I want to kind of talk about. It's like, okay, if they're going to become their own brand deal and they're creating their own products and they're selling hundreds of millions of dollars, which they are. I see these stats of so and so creator pulled this amount of money in, but they're not attributing to all the merch sales and everything else from that. Because I've seen some of these bigger creators merch sales in a given month, and I can tell you it's a lot more than what's being calculated, from these so-called blogs or whatever, saying reporting how much they're making. Because the reality is
those blogs are very conservative.
No, they're extremely conservative.
When Forbes comes out, talking about influencers or anyone,
right?
Or is it Vanity or Variety?
It's Variety.
It's Variety.
Yeah.
Like those numbers are pretty low, I believe.
Well, they were saying, I know they were saying some of the top creators, they were only pulling in 10 to 12 million a year, and I know for a fact that just in merch. For one of those creators, they were pulling 1.5 a month in that. So that's a lot higher than that's just only in merch. That had nothing to do with anything else.
With AdSense or integrations.
Exactly. It's just like crazy. But
and there have been brands that have been successful with this as well. I believe is Bethany Moda that did something with Aeropostale and made them tens of millions of dollars in retail sales.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where, it's going to get harder to be able to work with creators and to get them to start endorsing, your brand or going to them saying, hey, you can have a percentage of this, when they can maybe just go out there and source their own product and create their own empire.
I can tell you this, the level...
It's making integrations more expensive right now as well.
The level of creators that are coming into the market right now, the ones that are actually disrupting the industry, they are smart and they are savvy and they understand all the aspects. They're not just picking up their camera and shooting it and editing it being done in 20 minutes. They're really very strategic. And when they can see, I could do this integrated brand deal. Yes, it will bring me $200,000 in over the course of this. And this is my asks that I need to do. Yes, it's going to probably only take me 4 or 5 hours of production to do it. And then probably another 4 or 5 hours of working with legal and, all the other stuff. So that's a total of, maybe 12 hours total. And yes, that would be a great paycheck. Or I can actually source my own similar product, use Alibaba, do Amazon fulfillment, and make more money. Mm-hmm. And I've seen creators that they've made more in a month than they did in the whole previous year because they decided to source their own product and push it. And they put a little bit more attention when it's their own brand that they're pushing. And they're like, there's a lot of stories leading up to it. There's a lot of hype. So the launch is just amazing. And then boom, people are ready to buy.
Yeah. Sell out.
Sell out.
Yep.
Well, I don't mean like sell out. But
right.
Not that sell out.
They sell their product.
They sell their product.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting. So
and some of them have gotten so shameless about it. If you look at the Paul brothers, like their audience loves them creating music videos around their merch.
Yeah.
Like, it's amazing. It's a different time that we live in. But it's for brands to remember, look, these aren't, just creatives.
Yeah.
I mean, like a lot of people think of them as like these creative kids that, make videos. These are media rock stars. These are the future of media executives.
100%. And I can tell you right now, yes, from the outside appearance, it's like, okay, who is this person? Who is this kid? Whatever. There's a lot of that. But the reality is you sit in a room with some of these top creators. They know exactly what's going on.
They're crazy intelligent.
Very intelligent. They understand, if I do this increases the sell. How many times they actually try to sell merch in a video, how much the sales will actually go up from that is crazy. It's crazy. But anyway, that being said, where do you see, just in closing on this, where do you see the future of integrated brand deals? Like where's that going to be? Let's say in a couple of years.
I think it's going to be a much bigger part of the media mix, as I mentioned earlier. I think brands are going to become much more sophisticated around it, and I think there's going to be a lightning period in the next couple of years where brands are going to realize that there's more data around integration, especially around like the influencer side of the business.
Right.
There's a lot more data there when it comes to of what they can use. Then we can compare it to traditional commercials. Because think about it. Let's say like there's a huge brand. Let's say like a Coca-Cola, and let's say they have they're promoting one of their brands,
Coke Zero.
Let's say Coke Zero.
Yeah.
How many video commercials are they creating in, let's say, a 5-year period?
Right. And what is
no, so that's a question for you.
No. They would probably do one a quarter, if not more than that, a couple a quarter. And their budget for those are going to be off the charts.
Sure. And then do you think they're actually measuring how many sales they're getting from those commercials?
Absolutely not.
No. So if you were to take AI and try to take the data they have, it's going to be very limited because they have a limited amount of data.
Right.
Both when it comes to like what happens, what are the outcomes, but specifically when it comes to the amount of data they have, like let's say unstructured. If they're doing 4 videos a year for let's say 5 years, that's a really small sample and you can do nothing with it. When we create our data predictions or like our predictive analytics, we're sourcing from tens of thousands of videos.
Yeah.
You can't do that with traditional advertising. There's no company that's making that many commercials.
Yeah.
And so and so there's a big problem. First of all, there's not enough unstructured data for them to source from. And then second of all, there's not enough people or enough brands that are measuring sales and correlating it to those commercials. And as we talked about Alibaba and Amazon becoming much bigger players in the retail space, they're not going to be satisfied when a brand comes to them and says, "Hey, we're spending $500 million a year on this brand." That's not going to be enough for them. They're going to say, "Well, wait. How well is this brand converting on our platform? Oh, it's not converting? Oh, yeah. And also, what's our margin with this brand on this platform?" And if those two things aren't, resonating, to Amazon, they can make it so that brand's irrelevant. And so right now, a lot of these brands are creating their own e-commerce stores to try to figure out how they deal, with this evolution of retail. And what it comes down to is they're going to have to depend on being inside the content where there's way more data rather than creating their own one-off commercial.
Yeah.
The days of commercials are they're slowing down. I'm not going to say they're going to die. Well, they're always going to be around, but it's going to be a lot more limited, and people are going to be much more data-driven where they're going to need to source a lot more data than they ever have before, especially specifically unstructured data.
Yeah, and I can tell you for the kind of looking in the future a little bit of where this is going, I think the writing's on the wall. And, as I'm driving down and I see these box stores that are closing down, more and more people are buying online. It's super sad. It's sad to see. More and more people are buying online. It's a lot more convenient.
We order milk online. We order everything
same
online.
Day, and you get it within hours. You know,
Yes.
it's just crazy. But that's the whole thing is it's easier and more convenient. That's what people want right now. It's about the convenience of it. Here's an interesting thing. And this is probably the most interesting thing about Amazon is they actually introduced live streaming now integrated into Amazon. So like you could have an influencer go in on a sales page, do a live stream for a specific product. Do you know how big that is?
Well, that's amazing.
Huge.
Well, so according to a lot of our partners in China, and this is going back to what you just said. According to a lot of our partners in China, and with some of the research that we've done, Alibaba has spent around $1 billion on just influencers.
That's crazy.
In the last year, and some of it's rev share, and then some of it isn't, and they're seeing a lot of sales happen from live streaming. And so Amazon and Alibaba are both learning from each other.
It's
we're
writing on the wall. That's why I see the future is
here.
going is less.
Well,
less
what do you think
structured.
Amazon has a creator program? Why do they have an influencer program? It's because this is
signed
a
an
big
NDA.
part
I
of.
can't go-
Oh, you can't go there. Sorry.
We don't need to edit this out. But I mean, we can't go into that.
How many things have we edited out today? A lot.
A little bit.
Well, but what it comes down to is, there's going to be I don't know. I haven't spoken to Amazon about this, but there's going to be a lot of things that's going to really empower creators, and they're right now out there pushing it. I'm seeing commercials
and it's in
all
their
the
best
time.
interest, and it's the best interest of the creators. It just makes sense.
And this is where Google and YouTube and Facebook are going to have to figure out, okay, is Amazon going to become a competitor, or are they going to become a resource to empower their current creators?
Yeah.
And because of Twitch.tv, even though it's very niche, it's doing what TV hasn't been able to do.
I'm telling you, I think if one thing is, I know everyone wants their own piece of everything, but if they could work like an Apple deal with Amazon, say, okay, just give us a percentage of everything that's going over on these links that are coming from the page, that would be a slam dunk, and make it a little bit more tighter integrated. But right now, it's not going to happen. But that's a discussion for another day. Okay. Thank you all for coming on.
Wait, has it already been an hour?
That's it.
Oh
it's
my
like
goodness.
we got to go. We got to work. But thank you for coming on, and make sure you hit that subscribe button, whether you're on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to tell your friends about this, because that's what you're supposed to do as friends. You're supposed to tell people what you actually like.